Hello, I'm Stephen Fagin, curator of the 6th Floor Museum at Dealey Plaza, and thank you for joining us for this special conversation with artist Tansill Stough-Anthony. Tansill was only 7 years old in 1963, but the death of President Kennedy had a profound impact on her young life, as it did for so many other children of the 1960s. Decades later, just prior to the 50th anniversary of the assassination in 2013, Tansill responded to the assassination by painting a series of works entitled Fading Memories in honor of JFK. And we are so grateful to have that collection of paintings here at the 6th Floor Museum at Dealey Plaza. Tansill joins us today to talk about her memories and her art. Thanks for being with us. Tansill, thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Let's go way back. You were quite young when President Kennedy was in office, but I understand that you have some pretty powerful memories of him that you wouldn't expect a second grader maybe to have.
Yes, I do. You want me to say a little bit of detail about that?
Yeah, you went to a Catholic school and you certainly had an awareness of President Kennedy prior to the assassination.
Yeah, most definitely, because he was the first Catholic president, and that it was all over the Catholic school, you know. He was a very prominent photograph in our classroom and any classroom there. I remember the day that happened. We got to school, and I'm trying to remember. It's been a while. Yeah, the class was just going on, and then the teacher left the room because there was someone drawing her out, and she came back in, and she had tears coming down her face, and was trying to hold it in. We could see, and we wondered what's happened here. And like you said, I do remember the light coming through on the left side, and it was like everything did go black and white. That's what I remember it through. I don't remember any color, and I think maybe because we did watch black and white TV. And anyway, she announced that the president had been assassinated. And it didn't make any sense to me because I had not really had a close loss in my world. But he seemed to be in our world more than any other president had been because of going to this Catholic school and being brought up Catholic. So it made a big impact on us, and they went ahead and let school out for the day. The parents came, and my mother came to get us. My brother Dow, who's a year behind me, was in first grade. I was in second, and it was not a good day. Everybody was very sad, and we went home, and the TV was on, reviewing what happened at the assassination in Dallas. And it was very confusing to me to process what it was that had happened. But I saw it through my parents' eyes of the sadness, particularly my mother's, because she had grown up Catholic, gone to Catholic school. And it left a huge impression on me, but I didn't realize it until years later. And I saw it in Life magazine. I picked this up and I said, oh my gosh, these memories are coming back to me. And I'd started painting and doing a lot more drawing for galleries, and I thought I'd do something just for me. And that became the series of Fading Memories, the JFK series.
So we've jumped ahead a little bit because you actually did the Fading Memories series around 2011, 2012. Is that correct?
I did.
Okay. So this is almost 50 years after the assassination that the inspiration hits you to sort of respond in the way that you did. I understand that the first painting came about because of an art class you were taking. Why don't you tell me that story?
That's true. I was living in Hot Springs and driving to Little Rock because I love to take classes that involve having models, so I was taking a graduate class, and not for credit or anything. I already had my degree, just wanted to go a little further and get some instruction because I felt stuck. And so I had this wonderful instructor. I wish I could remember his name. Sorry. And he did say, what are your strong suits in art and in design? And I said, drawing. But I love to paint. I finally started painting. And I don't know how to combine these two. And he said, well, then that's what you're going to do for the next, whatever it was, 10 weeks or 12 weeks, is try and combine those two. But I want you to look back at artists from the past to see where they fit in and what you may relate to with what they've done with their strong suits. And I thought, this is good. You know, I had something to look at and reference. And I started studying and found that there was an artist named Gerhard Richter. And I really enjoyed some of his style, but the scents seemed to leave me because it got so muddy when he raked over it. He would paint and then rake over it. And you couldn't tell what was there. And it was a new style. And of course, he's very famous now and was back then. And he's still alive, I believe. He's 90. Anyway, that influenced me because I thought there's a feeling there that I can't see. What is that I can portray? And so I started out with drawing Jackie, and then I painted over that drawing on the canvas and built it up. And then I thought, okay, what is it that portrays to me? And it was just a portrait. And while it was still wet, I thought, wonder what would happen if I raked over it. And I did. And it was scary at first, because once you have something up that's, a visual of someone recognizable, then you don't want to scrape over that. But I did, and I went, that's it. That's the past, how they fade in and out, these memories. And that began the series.
Now, of all the imagery from that weekend, any idea why Jackie Kennedy came to mind first?
I think there might have been a picture in the Life magazine. I'm not quite sure, but I think so. And that's it saddened me, and it also evoked the memories from the past that I could probably relate to at her point now. Yeah.
And you brought this painting to your art class. Tell me how the other students responded.
Well, they all knew who she was in the painting. They were all a little confused as to why I had gone over it, raked over it. And then I explained it. I said I needed a feeling to go along with the portrait. And it kind of worked. They were still confused, I guess, because they didn't see the rest of the series. And that's why I found it really important to keep going with it for me.
Did it surprise you? I mean, these students that were in class with you, none of them remembered the assassination the way you did. And I understand there were even some international students in there. Was it surprising to you that Jackie Kennedy was instantly recognizable to these folks?
Yes. I'm so glad you remembered that from our first interview. Yes. They knew who she was. But most of them would say Onassis, Jacqueline Onassis, and she was married to President Kennedy. But it really was, yeah, the portrait they obviously knew.
Now, this is a one-time painting, Jacqueline Kennedy, but you decided to take it further, and it became a series, kind of painting by painting. Not really sure what direction it was going to go.
Correct. I decided to stay with that style. It's changed a little bit, but you can see the evolution of it because you all have all the paintings. And then I have it in my memory, of how that occurred.
Now, this is just a few years prior to the 50th anniversary of the assassination in 2013. So was that on your mind as well, the idea that this was reaching the half-century mark in your memory?
It must have been because it was on TV. A lot was on TV. And I recorded everything and started watching it. And it was the sorrow and the sadness that I felt, and that became connected to my loss of my father. And I realized there was some areas that I hadn't completed in my grieving process, and I think this really helped put some closure there.
There are 9 paintings in the series of Fading Memories. Jackie was first. Let's talk a little bit about the second one. You chose to paint a portrait of John F. Kennedy Jr. Tell me about that.
Yes. This one's really fun. What stood out to me was that he was honoring his father after the funeral. I think this is after the funeral, or it, I'm a little vague about some things because it has been years and I've done a lot more paintings, but
it was right outside St. Matthew's Cathedral.
Yes, that's it. Okay. And anyway, his dad would teach him to salute correctly. And I mean, this to me was the most touching because when I painted it, I had no idea it would come out like this, but it looks like a little angel wing to me. And that's just a shadow, that's right behind him, I believe, from the pants leg of his uncle. But that, in the little socks, they were coming down and around his ankles. And anyway, yeah, that was probably the most touching one right there. But backing away from it and seeing that angel wing, I went, oh my gosh, I can't mess this up too much, scraping across it. I remember that. And, the technique can be modified. Okay, well, the technique I use is always beginning with an underpainting. Most of the time I draw or sketch something in my sketch pad first. Then I place it on a canvas. And this is one of the ones I did for the Fading Memories. And you can see the pencil mark. I just use a real soft pencil to quickly try and sketch out where things are going to go. And here, I don't know what, you see different things and they don't show up in the final product. But what happens is, here's the pencil sketch, and then I start using a real light oil wash. Usually it's asphaltum or Venetian red or something like that. And I look for the lights and the darks, lines that I want to emphasize. Jackie was the one I wanted to emphasize in this. Wasn't sure how that was going to work out. This was darker, but I'm going to go down to this one. And as a reference, you can see I still had her kind of fading into the background. So what I wanted to do was highlight. And so I did. I highlighted this Jackie
I disregarded any kind of drips. I was working real fast with my lights and my darks, and contrast is what I was looking for. These are representative of shadows. And then across the top, I wanted it to feel heavy instead of an open sky. So this is what I got. I put a little bit of color in this particular painting and to represent the United States, mostly the red, white, and blue. There's also, I wanted to point something out over here. There was the Pope that was blessing this funeral procession. And that was, I didn't really want him to be prominent. Although in the reference, he was very prominent because he wears all white. And so I pretty much chose to just have him fade because I really thought this was about Jackie and her grief. I'm trying to, oh yeah, okay. Then the next part is I check a painting that I think I've almost completed every day to see where it is, how damp it is, if it's ready to rake across. And the purpose of raking across something gives it a mystery, a mystique, pushes it to me, in my feelings, makes it look like it's in the past. I know a painter that does this, that's an excellent painter, but it's completely abstract. And I call this somewhat abstract realism. Now, I wanted to show you my tool that I use for scraping. And usually, after doing several of these, I have found out that it takes about 3 days to get the paint where it's almost dry, but not quite there. So it doesn't just go through the whole painting and obliterate it. And so what I do is just slowly take it across a painting. Let's say this was damp oil paint, beginning to cure. And that's what I did on this and just brought it across. This one I did a little more lightly than some of the other ones I've done because there's so much subject matter going on. And that's about it. Stand back and look.
This painting of John Jr. obviously is based on a famous photograph taken at the funeral. All of these are inspired by or based directly off of iconic imagery, mostly from Life magazine, correct?
That's correct, yes.
When you would paint these works directly from a Life magazine photograph, would you blow the photograph up? How would you sort of transfer what we were seeing in a historic image to the canvas?
Many times I would project it on there and draw it directly from that, that image. A lot of all that gets covered up though in the painting process because it is a deliberate use of levels that you bring forward. Some of it I didn't have on there. Some of the areas I didn't have the image of, and I would do my own thing with that.
You paint more about the Kennedy funeral than any other particular moment from the assassination weekend. Was that a sequence that stood out from your childhood memories of the assassination, the TV coverage?
Yes, very much so, because it was on at our house 24/7. I mean, well, of course it went out at, we didn't get TV at night, but back then, but yeah, it was just on constantly. And I suppose I would see my mother's reaction, and everybody was very solemn and quiet around the house.
you and your parents and your brother, I imagine, kind of all crowded around what was most likely a relatively small black and white television.
Yes. Oh, yes.
We take that for granted today with huge widescreen TVs, but this was a collective moment viewed similar to your paintings through this kind of hazy black and white prism. When you rake those paintings, in addition to kind of reflecting the haziness of time and memory, is there any indication there of watching it on grainy black and white TV at the same time?
I didn't think of it, but probably. It's probably why I went to that black and white image in my mind of memories. Yes.
Art in the eye of the beholder, I suppose people can, that's one of the wonderful things about art like yours. We can read into it and find our own interpretations, whether it's memory or the graininess of black and white TV. You stick with the theme of the Kennedy funeral to the next painting, which depicts Caroline Kennedy. And there's something kind of unique about the way Caroline appears in this painting. Tell me about that, please.
Well, you know, Caroline, unfortunately, is the only living relative here of this family. And I didn't want to rake over her because her memory is still here. She's alive. And to me, that it just didn't fit. But I wanted to have her. This little 6-year-old, I believe, maybe 5, I can't remember for sure, at her dad's funeral, and kneeling right next to the casket. One thing, though, that I did leave out, and I think it might have been the loneliness, because I'm jumping to the future, knowing that she's still alive, and going back, I didn't see her mother there beside her. And she was. Jackie was right there beside her and comforting her. But I didn't see her there. I felt like she had moved on.
That's interesting. Also, a representation of how we sometimes misremember the past. We think of an incident in a particular way, even if it's not reflective of the truth, the reality of.
Yes, very much so. Yes.
Now, you were approaching your 8th birthday in January when the assassination took place, so you weren't too much older than Caroline Kennedy. Did you identify with her in particular?
Oh, yes, very much so. Yes, and yeah, I wish I'd met her. Never got to meet her.
The opportunity, right? You almost had the opportunity.
Oh, I almost did. Yes, I got a job at the Metropolitan Museum, and yeah, then I couldn't. Well, what did I get? ACL repair. I was a runner, and I was running around Central Park, and I hurt my knee, and I could not walk. I had to get crutches, and then I had to go stop and have an operation, and which meant I pretty much lost that job because it was one of my first ones out of college. And then I found out, oh my God, that Caroline Kennedy had gotten a job there also. You know, totally different area. I was in the art and design, and they hired me to be in the gift shop. But I thought, well, that's a step in, you know? So, yeah, I wish I'd been able to stay long enough to meet her.
Well, maybe you'll have the chance to meet Caroline Kennedy at some point. Let's talk about the next painting, which depicts the riderless horse. Tell me about that.
The comparison horse, you know, some of this is bringing history alive to me. I didn't know about a lot of this and what was happening. And the comparison horse is a representation of someone that they're paying homage to, with the backward boot. This is a horse named Blackjack, and he was part of the funeral procession. And this is, let me see. Yeah, it's a single horse without a rider and backwards boots or backward boots. Yeah. So that was kind of fun. I was interested in trying to portray some of the things that I didn't know about back then in my paintings. Plus, I love horses. So,
Now, as I understand it, you really didn't read much about the assassination. You didn't become a student of the subject during the intervening years between 63 and when you started this series, but then you actually began to read and study and learn more about the Kennedys and the assassination, right?
yes, and that was my link to history. And since then, I have found out that there are teachers out there that realize some people learn a different way, and that is by painting or drawing or sculpting, and it's through the arts, and our brains are stimulated to remember through that way. I have an example of a friend's grandson that just he did a painting and he learned all about this artist and then the time around that time period. So some of us need an anchor for how we think, and then we can spread out from there. So yeah, my interest was because of my artwork, not the other way around. It kind of, then it became simultaneous.
The next painting in the series goes in a completely different direction. We jump to the Oval Office, and it's the coconut, the famous coconut from the PT 109 story sitting on the Resolute desk. What inspired this change in direction from the funeral to this moment?
Well, it was just another one of those things I just didn't know about. And, I kept looking at this picture of President Kennedy with this something on his desk. And I was looking for something within his desk and area to maybe do next. And this coconut popped up, and I thought, I gotta study that. And so here I am again. I painted it to know it. And it was very interesting that he had actually used a coconut to save the lives of all these people that were in his platoon. And it was World War II, and his boat had been capsized, and they swam, and he was a very strong swimmer. They had to swim to an island, and these natives came along. They couldn't talk to him. They didn't have a boat big enough because they used these little, tree hulls. And he carved out something to help the people come and find them, and asked the natives to go to this other island. And he handed them this coconut that said, "We're here, we're alive, please come get us." So that's not exactly what it said, but
I love how these paintings in many ways reflect your personal journey of discovery as you learned more about Kennedy and were inspired by different aspects of his life and legacy. It's worth noting that you didn't start off by saying there's going to be 7 paintings or 8 paintings in this series. It's what came to you, and the series kept building based on what you were interested in or what you discovered along the way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And there was such a freedom in that I became even more absorbed. From one thing, it would lead to something else. Yeah.
Is there a reason why we don't see President Kennedy himself in any of your paintings?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's his memory to me is not paintable. If I found it very difficult to do one of him and of he and Bill Clinton. It was more about Bill Clinton, President Clinton, than it was John F. Kennedy. So yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I think he just lives on in my memory without having to paint him.
You certainly have stand-ins for him, the riderless horse symbolizing the lost leader, the coconut symbolizing his heroism during World War II. So he's represented, but he's never quite there in the flesh, which I found very interesting.
Yeah.
You take it right back to the assassination with the next painting, and it's a departure, a real departure from what you've painted thus far. It's Zapruder frame 313. That's the name of the painting. Explain this one and what your inspiration was for this.
Well, in the sequence of me learning about all this became the next thing that I didn't understand or know about. And this frame, I didn't realize that they had held it back. I knew there'd probably, I'd heard about it, that there was a film of it. And it was hidden and not allowed to be out to the public because Zapruder felt like it was just too gory. And I thought, oh, what is it? So I kept looking at I had read about it, and then I started looking at the images, and I saw what he probably sensed was too gory for too many people. And I thought, I need to paint this. This is another integral part of allowing us to know what did happen in the past. Well, that kind of became controversial, didn't it? So that's why I painted it. Now it does have color, and I think that is it's the way Zapruder caught everything. I mean, it brought it to life for me that it is gory. It was bad. And it did have Jackie's pillbox hat portrayed there and her white gloves. And that's what she had on. She had on a light pink pillbox hat and her white gloves, and she reached for her husband's brains that were flying away. And anyway, Zapruder apparently didn't film anything after that. I don't know if that's true or not. But then the family did release it, and it became part of my paintings.
Right. The film was not seen on television for more than a decade after the assassination, and Life magazine did try to not use that frame 313 that showed the explosive impact of the fatal shot. So you certainly capture that. It's really interesting how you're so dedicated to replicating the look of historic photographs, but with the Zapruder film, you reduce it to the bare minimum. I mean, we have the splash of red representing the violence, and then we have Jackie's pillbox hat. Was there just too much else going on between the grass and the eyewitnesses? Was there just too much clutter in that to try and depict it realistically, or were you trying to say something in particular by making the rest of the background black instead of replicating Dealey Plaza?
I believe I was using the impact of what I remembered when I looked at that frame and walked away from it and started thinking about it. What did I remember? And those are the three items I remember: the blood, the hat, and the gloves.
That's fascinating. You're back to the funeral then with the next painting. You kind of circle back, almost full circle. And this was, for quite some time, this was actually the end of the series, correct?
It was. Yes, it was. The end of Camelot, and I'm looking at, what I've done here. This was really fun. It was, I believe it's the largest one, 36 by 48. And it took me longer than the other ones. But by then I was so entrenched in this that I just wanted to keep going somehow. And yet it seemed blasé when it was all black and white. So I did want to add a little color in this. And that's where the red, white, and blue come from, is that I wanted that to stand out. Because to me, those are our flag colors. And I did want to emphasize Jackie. I'm looking at this and I'm recalling that I did. And of course, in the photograph, she just kind of blended in with everybody else in the crowd. And so what I did to emphasize her image is to highlight it. And yeah.
We were talking earlier, and you have some kind of progression images that sort of show this particular painting as a work in progress. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Do you want me to show it?
Sure, that's fine. You can hold it up so we can take a look at it. I'm always fascinated by the process.
Okay. All right. Well, in this, here's the photograph. Do you see it okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So what I did here was just loosely sketch everything on. There's pencil mark under here. You can see that. And then I used a sepia oil paint. It was very thin, and started building up the images, the light and dark, and then leaving some exposed where I wouldn't even paint over it. And as I was working, I just allowed the last part of it to just drip, which I thought was kind of cool. I've seen that in some other paintings, but I didn't even realize I was doing that until I backed up and I went, I think I'll leave that. So yeah, that's the process of it. It's building it up and coming forward with colors or black and white like I used, just finishing it out, more depth.
And how long did it take to complete that particular painting?
Oh boy. I think I worked on this about a month, maybe 3 weeks. I'm not sure. It's been a while.
It is the largest of the series. Very impressive when you see it in person, and it really brings out the hazy quality that you achieved. You kind of scraping the painting at that haziness of time and memory. So that was the end of the series for quite a while, and then you became aware of us. You visited the 6th floor museum for the first time, and that actually inspired the next 2 paintings in the series. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your first visit to Dealey Plaza.
Oh, I was so excited. Let's see. I had met Nicola, the director, and had shown her. She graciously allowed me to show her the paintings that I had in the back of my car, because I knew she was in Little Rock at a meeting. And she said, yeah, we'd love to have those. And so then I was invited. It took years. Because I was trying to find somebody that would represent these paintings and this work I had put my lifetime into, part of my lifetime into, and talent. And we didn't come up with anyone. And I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to donate them. I'm at a point in my life, I'm able to, and I don't know what, we're talking about the museum. Okay. And then I got invited, Nicola invited me to the museum, and I was just blown away. I had to read everything because it filled in a lot of gaps for me, and to stand where things had happened, I was just astonished. So yeah, that I actually had 2 more, didn't I, after that, or not?
Yes, you did. You painted 2 more that you told me were kind of in response to or inspired by your visits to the museum.
Yeah.
I'm curious, before we talk about those in particular, visiting Dealey Plaza, this recognizable site, which you had obviously seen on that small black and white television and film footage that weekend, did it meet your expectations as far as your 7-year-old memory of what this place should look like?
It did, but I don't think I had the expectations. I think that I was so excited to be able to see what my life had been painting, to see where it was in real life. And even from the window that Oswald, shot, at least one of the shots we know. So, I don't know. I'm kind of lost on that one.
Well, clearly your visit did touch you because you responded with 2 more paintings. The first one, entitled Lost Hope, is based on a famous Life magazine photograph of a young boy at a Chicago memorial service. Why did that image inspire you for this next painting?
Because of what Kennedy and what he represented is the equality of people. And it represented how far spread and how many levels that went through. And I didn't have that part of him in this series. And that became the next painting because of that. I really needed an area of how he served the country. And that was, to me, the representation of everyone was included.
So I'm also going to talk about this one because I did keep my sketch, or at least a photograph of my sketch. I know it's somewhere in my studio, but if you saw it, you'd know why I couldn't find it. So anyway, this is my basic sketch of before the final painting, before I rendered this. It's all in oils, and I get a feel for where the contrasts are and the shadows. And that's how I do my sketches first. Then I transfer it over to the canvas. And then I do the same technique as I did here. Right here. This I very lightly went over because I looked and tried to do some research. And I couldn't find whether or not this young gentleman was alive or not. And a lot of times I want to represent that feeling of a memory with pushing that paint, going slowly over it. Sometimes I think maybe it's because of the time when we had black and white TV, possibly. I'm not real sure. But anyway, that's what this is about. This is where I used that as a reference, and then I would slowly rake across. And then sign it.
It certainly speaks to the power of the Kennedy legacy, no question. And you conclude the series with the 9th painting, The View from the 6th Floor, which looks
Yeah.
well, tell us what we're looking at here. I don't want to interpret it for you.
Yeah. So after visiting the museum, I kept thinking, what did it look like? What did it look like going down this gun barrel, and how would that have appeared? And I started doing these little sketches. Do you all have the painting or the sketch?
We have the painting.
Oh, see, I don't have that's how, I guess it's emotions that came out in it, that the memory of what it was, I don't have it. So I have the sketch though, which is right here.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And I think it's very similar. But they also talked about, it got into such detail. And I think it was at the museum. If it wasn't, correct me. I know it was in something that I read about which curve it was. And I started looking at all that, and the grassy knoll and the other shooters and the you know, just everything about it, the signs and this and that. And so that's how that came about. Was the circle is actually like the gun, the barrel of the gun, not the sight.
It ties in very well to the Zapruder frame painting. I mean, those two go hand in hand, really, depicting the assassination from opposite ends, from the gun barrel and the limousine itself. I remember when you donated the paintings, one of them was still wet when we received it. I mean, it was very recently painted based on your visit to the museum, right?
Yes, it was.
And 3 of your works in this series were on display at the Governor's Mansion in Little Rock in 2013 for the 50th. Tell me about that.
Wait a minute. Oh, at the Governor's Mansion, yeah. Yeah, I was, they usually have artists, Arkansas artists, put up their work, and you're usually invited to put your work up during a ceremony. And they called me and wanted some of my work from this series. And so it was at the Governor's Mansion, and I was real proud of it.
Originally, they told you they only had room for 1, but they actually ended up taking 3.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's right. They called me back and said, do you have any more of these? And I did. Yeah, that's right. I'd forgotten about that.
The 3 that were on display was Jacqueline Kennedy and the 2 children, your paintings, all from the funeral, John Jr. and Caroline.
Yeah.
When you painted these, were you thinking about how young people who weren't alive in 1963, how they would respond to them or what they would gain from seeing these?
I think what it is I would like to say through these paintings is that it really connects more history. Some people, like I said, need it to be seen a different way and interpreted a different way. I don't know if it touches kids. I didn't think about that at the time. I really hope that it does.
Well, certainly it speaks to the passage of time and the significance of memory. Even as it fades, it still informs how we view the past. Are you finished with the Kennedy assassination story, or do you think eventually there'll be more works in the Fading Memory series?
Oh, I've thought about that. I've kind of revisited it every once in a while, but right now I don't have a vision of what it would be, but it is still circling around.
Well, we are grateful to have these 9 paintings in our collection, and we're grateful to you for that. And thank you. Thank you, Tansill, very much for being our guest today and sharing your memories and discussing your work.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us today. If you'd like to take a closer look at some of Tansill's paintings, we invite you to visit our online collections database at emuseum.jfk.org. And please check out some of the other programs that we have here on the YouTube channel of the 6th Floor Museum at Dealey Plaza. Thank you for joining us.